When I reached my 75th birthday, I couldn't bend down to tie my own shoes without groaning. My joints ached every morning, and the idea of touching my toes. That was a distant memory from decades ago. I'm Margaret, a retired nurse of 42 years, and today, at 80 years old, I can fold forward and place my palms flat on the floor. I can sit comfortably cross-legged for my grandchildren's story time. And just last month, I held a crow pose for the first time in my life. No, this isn't about miracle cures or expensive treatments. It's about something much simpler that transformed my golden years in ways I never imagined possible. Gentle yoga. You know, it's funny how life works. I spent over 4 decades as a nurse, caring for others, educating patients about health and wellness, yet somehow neglected to follow my own advice. Ironic, isn't it? I was the professional telling people to stay active, maintain flexibility, and prioritize preventive care. Meanwhile, I was working double shifts, grabbing quick meals in the hospital cafeteria, and collapsing into bed at the end of each day. When I retired at 72, I thought, finally. Time to relax, and relax I did. Maybe a little too well. Within 3 years, my body had stiffened up so badly that everyday movements became painful challenges. Getting in and out of the car was a calculated maneuver. Reaching items on the top shelf required strategic planning. And forget about gardening. My beloved rose bushes were becoming overgrown because I simply couldn't kneel down to tend them properly. The wake-up call came during a routine visit with my doctor, a young woman who could have been one of my nursing students years ago. Margaret, she said, reviewing my chart, your blood pressure's up, you've gained 15 pounds since last year, and your bone density scan is concerning. I nodded, having heard these same words come out of my own mouth to countless patients over the years. What are you doing for physical activity? She asked. Well, I walk to the mailbox every day, I offered weakly. Her expression was kind but firm. That's not going to be enough at this stage of life, she was right. And I knew it. As healthcare providers, we sometimes make the worst patients. I'd spent my career telling others what they needed to do, yet here I was, ignoring the basic principles of healthy aging I'd preached about for decades. That night I sat on my sofa, the same spot I'd been sitting nearly every evening since. Retirement, and I made a decision. This wasn't how my story was going to end. Not after all I'd seen in my nursing career. Not after watching patients who took charge of their health thrive well into their 90s, while others who surrendered to aging declined rapidly. I needed to practice what I'd preached all those years. My first instinct was to join a gym. That lasted exactly 2 visits. The pounding music, the sea of spandex-clad bodies half my age, and equipment I didn't understand left me feeling more defeated than motivated. Swimming seemed like a good option, but the chlorine aggravated my sensitive skin. Walking was fine, but the impact bothered my knees after about 15 minutes. I was starting to think my body was simply too far gone when my daughter suggested something I'd never seriously considered. Mom, why don't you try yoga? She asked over Sunday dinner. I nearly choked on my pot roast. Yoga? At my age? Honey, I can barely bend over to pick up the newspaper. How am I supposed to do those pretzel poses? She smiled and pulled out her phone. There's this YouTube channel called Gentle Yoga Journey. The instructor specializes in yoga for seniors. No pretzels required. That night, more out of curiosity than conviction, I typed gentle yoga for seniors into YouTube. What appeared wasn't what I expected. No impossibly thin young women in complicated poses. Instead, I found a warm, silver-haired instructor named Claire who spoke directly to people like me. Yoga isn't about touching your toes, she said in the video. It's about what you learn on the way down. Something about those words resonated deeply. For the first time, I considered that maybe flexibility wasn't just about physical capability. Maybe it was also about mental adaptation, learning to work with my body as it is now, not as it was 30 years ago or how I wish it could be. The next morning, I cleared a space in my living room, found an old exercise mat in the back of my closet, and pressed play on Claire's 10-minute morning yoga for beginners. I won't lie, even those simple movements challenged me. My balance wavered. My knees cracked. My breathing felt awkward and forced. But when those 10 minutes ended, something had shifted. My body felt awake. Not dramatically different, but present in a way it hadn't for years. And I hadn't hurt myself, which honestly had been my biggest fear. I can do this again tomorrow, I thought. And so I did. After 2 weeks of daily 10-minute sessions, I began to notice subtle changes. As a nurse, I couldn't help but observe my body's responses with clinical interest. My morning stiffness was decreasing. I was getting up from chairs with less effort. My balance while standing at the kitchen counter was more stable. These weren't miraculous transformations, but they were meaningful improvements in my quality of life. The nurse in me was fascinated. I began researching the physiological effects of gentle yoga on aging bodies, and what I discovered validated my personal experience. Regular gentle stretching increases synovial fluid in the joints, lubricating them for easier movement. The controlled breathing patterns in yoga help expand lung capacity, which naturally decreases with age. The balance poses, even modified ones, strengthen the small stabilizing muscles that help prevent falls. The very falls that I'd seen send so many elderly patients into a downward health spiral during my nursing career. Perhaps most interesting to me was learning about proprioception, your body's awareness of where it exists in space. This sense naturally diminishes as we age, contributing to that feeling of unsteadiness. The mindful movement in yoga helps retrain these neural pathways, improving balance and coordination. From my years in healthcare, I knew that maintaining independence is one of the most significant factors in quality of life for seniors. And independence requires mobility. Each small improvement in my flexibility and strength was actually an investment in my future autonomy. After a month, I graduated to 20-minute sessions. I found myself looking forward to my morning practice. The gentle movements had become a cherished ritual rather than a medical obligation. My body was beginning to remember what it felt like to move with intention rather than caution. One morning, while reaching for a coffee mug, I realized I hadn't felt that twinge in my shoulder that had been my constant companion for years. It wasn't until it was gone that I realized how much that chronic discomfort had been limiting me. As both a healthcare professional and now a yoga practitioner, I was becoming my own case study in the benefits of gentle movement for aging bodies. Of course, this journey wasn't without challenges. About 2 months in, I woke up with a flare-up of the arthritis in my hands so painful I could barely open a jar. My first thought was, well, that's the end of yoga. I almost didn't unroll my mat that day. What was the point if I couldn't even press my palms into the floor for a simple tabletop position? But then I remembered something Claire had said in one of her videos. Yoga isn't about doing it perfectly. It's about showing up and honoring your body exactly as it is today. So I showed up. I modified. I used fists instead of flat palms where needed. I focused more on gentle seated poses that day. And the next day, and the day after that. The arthritis flare eventually subsided, but something important had happened during those difficult sessions. I'd learned that consistency matters more than perfection. That working around limitations is its own form of strength. That being gentle with myself was perhaps the most important pose of all. There were other setbacks too. A week when my motivation simply vanished. A minor fall that made me temporarily fearful of balance poses. The embarrassment when my grandson walked in during a practice and found me in child's pose, rear end in the air, and couldn't stop giggling. But each time I returned to the mat. Sometimes with enthusiasm, sometimes with reluctance. Always with the knowledge that this practice was now part of who I was becoming in this new chapter of life. 4 months into my practice, something happened that I still consider a turning point. During a forward fold, a pose that had been particularly challenging for me, my fingertips touched the floor for the first time. I stood there bent over, fingertips grazing the carpet, tears welling in my eyes. It wasn't about the physical achievement itself. It was about what it represented, the realization that my body wasn't finished yet. That at 75 years old, I wasn't merely maintaining or slowing decline, I was actually improving. That moment changed everything. As my flexibility improved, I faced a new temptation, pushing too hard too fast. The nurse in me understood the dangers of this, especially at my age, but there's something intoxicating about progress that can cloud good judgment. After watching a video of more advanced senior yogis, I attempted a pose I wasn't ready for and strained my lower back. It wasn't severe, but it was enough to remind me that patience remains essential, regardless of progress. This led me to develop what I call my sustainable practice principles, guidelines I established to ensure my yoga journey could continue for years to come. First, I prioritize consistency over intensity. A gentle, 15-minute practice completed regularly provides more benefit than an occasional challenging session that leaves me sore for days. Second, I honor daily fluctuations. Some days my body feels more open and capable, other days it feels tight and resistant. I've learned to work with these natural rhythms rather than fight against them. Third, I focus on functional movements that translate to real-life activities. Can I reach items on higher shelves? Can I get up from the floor safely? Can I turn my head fully while backing up the car? These practical outcomes matter more to me than achieving impressive-looking poses. Fourth, I balance effort with rest. I include restorative poses in every practice, giving my body time to absorb the benefits of more active movements. And finally, I celebrate non-physical benefits. The mental clarity after practice. The improved sleep quality. The sense of accomplishment. The moments of peace in a world that often feels chaotic. This balanced approach has allowed me to maintain my practice through various life circumstances, holiday visits from family, a minor surgical procedure, even a 3-week bout with bronchitis. The practice adapts because I've designed it to be sustainable rather than spectacular. By my 76th birthday, yoga had become as routine as brushing my teeth, something I did daily without question or internal negotiation. The mat in my living room was no longer an aspirational piece of equipment, but a well-worn tool of daily life. One unexpected benefit of my yoga journey has been the community it's brought into my life. What began as a solitary practice in my living room gradually expanded in ways I never anticipated. It started with my neighbor Elaine, who noticed me carrying my yoga mat to the community garden one pleasant spring morning. I'd taken to practicing outdoors when weather permitted, enjoying the connection with nature. "What's that for?" she asked, eyeing my purple mat with curiosity. "Yoga," I replied, half expecting the skeptical reaction I'd have had myself a year earlier. Instead, her eyes lit up. "You do yoga? At our age?" I've always wanted to try it but thought I was too old to start. I heard my own former doubts echoed in her words and found myself saying, "Why don't you join me tomorrow? We can follow a beginner video together." The next day, Elaine arrived at my door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, nervous but willing. We practiced a simple 15-minute routine, modifying poses as needed, laughing at our wobbles and celebrating small victories. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked when we finished. Within a month, our duo had grown to a quartet, with 2 more neighbors joining our informal Silver Yogis group. We now meet 3 mornings a week in the community center's multi-purpose room. Each of us brings different physical challenges: Elaine's replaced knee, Barbara's osteoporosis, Richard's shoulder injury from his construction days, but we've all experienced improvements in mobility and mood. There's something powerful about witnessing others on a similar journey. When Richard finally managed to balance in tree pose without holding onto a chair, we all celebrated as though he'd summited Everest. When I demonstrated how I could now reach behind my back and clasp my hands, something impossible for me a year ago, their genuine amazement reinforced my own sense of achievement. Beyond the physical practice, we've developed a deeper connection. We share health tips from our various doctors. We discuss modifications that have helped with specific issues. We check on each other when someone misses a session. In a phase of life often marked by social contraction as friends move away or pass on, this new community has been an unexpected gift. We're not just practicing yoga together, we're witnessing each other's resilience and growth at a time when society often expects decline. The nurse in me recognizes the profound health benefits of this social connection. Research consistently shows that meaningful social engagement is as important for longevity as physical activity or proper nutrition. Our little yoga group provides both physical movement and social bonding, a powerful combination for healthy aging. Perhaps the most profound impact of my yoga journey has been the shift in how I view the aging process itself. As a nurse, I'd witnessed thousands of aging trajectories, some inspiring, many challenging. I'd seen the physical and cognitive declines, the loss of independence, the shrinking worlds of many elderly patients. Somewhere along the way, I'd internalized the belief that aging was primarily a process of loss and limitation. That after a certain point, the best one could hope for was to slow the inevitable decline. My yoga practice has fundamentally challenged this narrative. At 80 years old, I am more flexible than I was at 70. My balance is better than it was at 65. My posture is more upright than it was in my late 50s, when nursing had me hunched over patients' beds. I sleep more soundly, move more comfortably, and experience less pain than I did a decade ago. This isn't to say I've reversed aging. The mirror and my birth certificate confirm I'm firmly in my 8th decade. But I've discovered that certain aspects of physical well-being aren't on a one-way trajectory. Flexibility, balance, strength, and even pain levels can improve at any age with appropriate, consistent attention. This realization has been profoundly liberating. I no longer approach my annual checkups with dread, wondering what new decline will be documented. Instead, I've had the pleasure of surprising my doctors with improvements in blood pressure, bone density, and overall functional capacity. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," my physician said at my last visit, looking up from my chart with genuine amazement. This changed relationship with aging extends beyond the physical. There's a mental flexibility that has developed alongside my physical practice. I'm more willing to try new things, to put myself in situations where I might not be expert. Last month, I attended a watercolor painting workshop, something I would have dismissed as not for me in the past. When my grandchildren ask if I can join them on the floor for games, I no longer hesitate or look for the nearest chair. I simply lower myself down, cross my legs, and enter their world at their level. The look of delight on their faces when I can participate fully in their activities is perhaps the most precious reward of my increased mobility. I've come to understand that aging isn't something that happens to us passively. It's a process we actively participate in through our choices, our mindsets, and yes, our willingness to get on a yoga mat even when our bodies protest. The yoga philosophy concept of ahimsa, non-harming or compassion, has taught me to be gentler with myself, to speak to my body with kindness rather than frustration. The practice of santosha, contentment, has helped me find gratitude for what my body can do rather than focusing on limitations. These principles have applications far beyond the yoga mat. They've become guides for how I approach this stage of life, with compassion, acceptance, and a willingness to continue growing. When I look back at the woman I was 5 years ago, the retired nurse who couldn't bend to tie her shoes, who'd accepted stiffness and discomfort as inevitable companions of aging, I feel a profound gratitude for the journey that brought me here. Today, at 80, I practice yoga for 30 minutes most mornings. I can touch my toes with straight legs. I can hold balance poses that once seemed impossible. I can get up and down from the floor without assistance. But more importantly, I move through the world with confidence rather than caution. If you're watching this and thinking, that's nice for her, but I could never do that, please hear me when I say, I thought exactly the same thing. If you told me at 75 that I'd be demonstrating crow pose at 80, I would have laughed in disbelief. The beauty of gentle yoga is that it meets you exactly where you are. You don't need to be flexible to start, you practice to become flexible. You don't need perfect balance, you practice to improve your balance. Every limitation becomes an opportunity for mindful adaptation rather than a reason to quit. For those of you with healthcare backgrounds like mine, you already understand the physiological benefits. But understanding them intellectually is very different from experiencing them personally. It's time to take your own advice, the advice you've given to countless patients over the years. And for everyone else watching, please know that it's never too late to begin. Your body is remarkably responsive at any age. The key is to start gently, progress slowly, and practice consistently. If this retired nurse who spent decades on her feet can find a new relationship with her body in her late 70s, imagine what possibilities might be waiting for you. I'd love to hear about your own gentle yoga journey in the comments below. Whether you're just considering starting or have been practicing for years, your experience matters and might just inspire someone else to unroll a mat for the first time. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, flexibility, both physical and mental, isn't about age. It's about showing up, breathing deeply, and honoring the body you have right now. I'll see you on the mat.